Hello everyone, and welcome to the last Learning from Entrepreneurs seminar for 2020. This one's titled Silicon Yarra, Leveraging Melbourne's Digital Entrepreneurial Ecosystem. To commence the proceedings, I'd like to, on behalf of all present, acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which Swinburne has its Australian campuses. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that this relationship is a continuing importance to the Wurundjeri people who are living today. And we also extend our respect to all other Aboriginal language groups and First Nations. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. We will finish tonight's seminar with a question and answer session with our panellists. So I invite you to enter your questions into the chat box as they occur to you during the evening, and my colleague Benji Zarella will curate those and pass them up to me during the evening. And just for your information, this session is being recorded and may be published on the AGSE LinkedIn site and on our AGSE website. I am Rosemary Fisher and I am a lecturer here in Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Swinburne, and let's get into it. Silicon Yarra, as it is informally referred to, is shaping up to be an entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem in Melbourne's east that is attracting a noticeable number of tech startups and tech large enterprises. So you can see from the map that's on your on your screen, that we've started to map the Silicon Yarra region. We have the businesses there of our guest panellists today. We have United Make, we have Xero and PaperCut, and you can see that Silicon Yarra sort of starts in the CBD area, moves through Richmond and Cremorne and filters through Hawthorn. On this map, we've got our Pantheon companies. Those are companies that are former startups that have achieved such a size that they are influential in their own right on the ecosystem. We've also mapped some of the unicorns, as you know, companies that have reached over $1 billion valuation, and some Sunicorns. And Sunicorns are high-tech startups that have had early rounds of venture capital, and they've had substantial amounts of venture capital. And the expectation is that these companies in their next rounds of venture capital will reach unicorn status. So you can see there's really quite a few starting to emerge in this region. Thanks, Benji. So joining me today are three panellists, and we're still waiting on one of our panellists. We've got three panellists to represent the diverse, rich diversity of the Silicon Yarra region. And we'll start, I think, perhaps with Chris Dance. Chris Dance is co-founder of PaperCut, a print and copy output management company with a global footprint that started out right here in Silicon Yarra. Chris, can we invite you to say a few words about yourself and the company?
Yeah, not a problem. It's great to be here. We do a lot of work with Swinburne. We have a lot of graduates come through and have been in the area for a long time. And yeah, our story goes back to I was a university student, and originally my first job was washing dishes in a Mexican restaurant, and my dad eventually pulled me aside and said, "Chris, you got to do a better job than that." So I went back to my old high school and I got a job as a network administrator / IT tech there. And that's where I saw this problem. Every day I would go and pick up a pile of paper sitting next to the printer in the library and just throw it out in the recycling bin. And it frustrated me because every other technical problem I could fix, but that one I couldn't, because it was around human behaviour. It was around waste, around lack of accountability. So I said, oh, look, we can develop some software to fix this, and built it for the school, and it was a success, and then put it online. And then, over a year or two, it started to earn more than the day job selling online. And today, the software is in use in over 160 countries. There's actively around 200 million users in any given week use the software. And we like to say that, if we were a country, it would be something like the 12th largest in the world, but every one of our people who are using our software are saving trees. And it's great to have a tech company with a higher purpose. It's more than just return. It's also saving the environment. And we've been very active in the region, and lots of Swinburne students have come through our ranks over the years. So it's great to come back and give a little back.
Yeah, and it's great to have you back. Thanks very much, Chris. Also joining us tonight is Rachael Powell, who is Chief Customer Officer at Xero, which is a Pantheon company situated in our ecosystem. Founded in New Zealand in 2006, it's now a publicly listed company and has quite an impact on its ecosystem. Rachael, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. I'm actually a Swinburne student, so it's great to be back with the Swinburne family. So I've been with Xero for nearly 5 years. So I joined when it was under 10 years old. And the interesting thing about Xero is that we are a company that was born in the cloud. So what that means is that we were able to go global from day one. So it came out of a vision that was quite ahead of its time from our founder, Rod Drury, who was having some challenges with communicating real life information between him and his accountant. So he decided to actually create a software product that was in the cloud. So it meant that the ledger, the accounting system ledger, the double entry accounting, was visible by him and his accountant at the same time. So instead of sending spreadsheets back and forth. Now, there was other accounting platforms in the globe, but they were all desktop-based. So it just meant that didn't have that real-time updates between the accountants and their small businesses. So he created this business, and it actually went global from day one. And it actually went publicly listed at about 2 years old, which is quite young age for a startup company. So it was born out of Wellington in New Zealand. And over that period of time, we've now grown to 3,000 employees, 180 countries. We have customers using our software. We have offices in 5 continents. We have over 2.4 million subscribers. And we have a very, very clear purpose to improve the lives of people in small business, their advisors and their communities around the globe. So it's a very purpose-led company, and that everyone that we recruit and we employ have an affinity with small business and have an affinity with that purpose. The other interesting component of us versus some of our competitors is that we have a philosophy that together is better, and that's where that ecosystem comes in. So our strategy is to actually access the multitudes, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of small businesses around the globe through the accountant and bookkeeper channel. We also do sell direct to small businesses, but we know that small businesses are more likely to be in business after 5 years when they're getting the right advice and the right support from their advisor. And then we have over 900 app vendors that plug into our platform. So they're bespoke apps that small businesses use to run their business. So whether that's time scheduling and attendance, which is very important in shift work like hospitality, whether it's inventory management solutions, whether it's some cash flow management tools that sit on top of our cash flow management product offering, spotlight forecasting and the like. So that's the whole ecosystem that is really about serving the small business economy, which is a really underserved market and so important to make up the GDP and also employing significant amount of people across the globe. Yeah. And it really is, it's the partnership of Xero with that ecosystem that helps solve those problems.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Rachael. And finally, representing very young startups in Silicon Yarra, we have Mond Qu of United Make Mond, would you like to take over the screen and tell us a bit about United Make?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's great to be a part of the Swinburne family. So I am part of the sort of Industry 4.0 sort of in future factory area and looking at the industry type of thing. And I thought today I'll just give a little introduction to what we do. Very different to what Chris and Rachel do. But I thought the best way to show it would be to present it. So we're a really small studio located at the back of a traditional furniture company, and we are a design agency that does everything from virtual reality to architecture. So we have designed speculative cities for the Urbanism and Architecture Biennale in Shenzhen, looking at what the future of Melbourne can look like when subscription-based models, augmented reality, and autonomous systems would proliferate. We've done a lot of bespoke artwork for big companies like Facebook, and this one was done out of 20,000 chopsticks in their Singapore office to tell the story of the merlion and how it's protecting Singapore from where it's come from. We've also done a lot of installations for Westfield Doncaster. This was a reimagination of Chinese New Year and reinterpreting how Chinese New Year, the blooming flower, as well as the red packets, would actually engage more of the customers and storytell. We also did a effigy for a festival in Byron Bay, where each of these lanyards were put together in this middle, where basically the definition was you are what your work is, you could define what you are, and at the end of it, the whole thing was burnt. We also do a lot of product engineering as well as product design. So this was lampshades made of recycled coffee grounds that we do for a local barista in Richmond. We also make fictional islands on Google. This was at Malta, where we designed a completely fictional place where we did a sort of TED talk about it, about sort of the digital landscape that we're living in, which is the physical and digital. And this was a whole model that we made that basically was live streamed onto Google. So it recedes from, stage set models stealing from, CGI and Hollywood, where it will be live streaming these favelas that we designed that was basically linked up to Google at the time. We also speculate and design, future sort of cinematic models. So this is a reimagination of the Burrow from Harry Potter, as well as the Shrieking Shack. As well as thinking about what the future of furniture and the digital interfaces look like. So we're pretty much in the front end, a lot of the softwares and technologies to look at more of the UX and the UI. So we're more a design agency that do that. And we're currently looking at how the workplace would be expanded within this digital world rather than just the physical world. And also we do a lot of furniture designing. Of course, we collaborate with the furniture company in the front of us, and these are all renders. So these aren't real. So we actually are able to generate renders as well as images of future designs without having to make them built, and people can actually walk into them in the digital world. We also look at affordable housing, ways of doing that within Melbourne as a super block concept. We make digital festivals, where we ran a full workshop program for the Architecture Association in London, where we created festivals with partnerships with Deliveroo and other tutors from around the world. And we also created a pro bono project during the pandemic to raise funds for all the artists from 40 different countries around the world. And I guess it's really hard to, put us in one box on what we do. So I'll just end with the fact that, we make design happen, and we're a multidisciplinary studio based in Richmond.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mond. That was really interesting. Okay, so our panellists are going to join me tonight and take us through their thoughts on the role of the ecosystem plays for tech startups, how the pandemic has impacted their technology businesses and what the future might mean for business, and the role that universities could or should play in an ecosystem. But I'd like to just set the scene first by orienting us to what an ecosystem is, so we're all on the same page. It is a peculiar system of interdependent actors and relationships that directly or indirectly support the creation and the growth of new ventures. And tech ecosystems in particular are of critical interest to all of us at the moment, because the global trends have made it very clear that it is technology that is going to play a fundamentally pivotal role in driving our future prosperity. So, Chris, can I start with you? People say that an effective ecosystem contains the fundamental ingredients necessary to help new ventures start and then to help existing ventures grow. Since its inception 22 years ago, PaperCut has grown to the extent that, as you said, if it was a country, it would be the 12th largest country in the world. And that's all happened from here in this Silicon Yarra ecosystem. So given your experience of growing PaperCut from within this ecosystem, what were the ingredients that were fundamental to your growth? How did you leverage them? And what lessons do you have, or take-out messages do you have for that, from that experience for other people?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is that, particularly in a digital world or a world today, it's so important that we do think globally. And Australia's got a lot of disadvantages. We're geographically isolated. It is quite costly to, ship goods around the world. We are time zone isolated from large parts of natural markets for us to expand into, Europe, America, for example. But in a digital world, all those barriers knock down. Time zone is still an issue, but it knocks down. So thinking globally is really important. And, our very first paying customer was over in the States, and our growth and our rapid growth was always overseas. But really, you go back to the early days, having a support network that was local, even though that's not where your customers were, was so important because, I remember the early days of getting in the early 2000s into developing a reseller network, another important part of our ecosystem. What margins do you give resellers? What is channel management? How do we do that? And I was just a young kid out of university. How would I even do this? So what I did is I got on the phone and called up local software companies. No cold introduction. And I said, hey, I'm an Australian software developer as well, and I need to know how to do something. Can you tell me about this complicated tax system and W-9 forms in the United States? And it was amazing because you had that local contact. They would help you. They weren't competitors, but they had no reason to help other than you were local. So having a local ecosystem, having a local community, something like we're talking about today, is so important because there's an initial connection. And network is everything. One thing I would say as a product person or as a creator, as an entrepreneur, it's not your job to have the answers. You will have some creative brilliance occasionally, but really 90% of the answers that you have to overcome as a business or a growing business have already been answered by others. So it's actually your job to find the answer. And that's where the power of network and ecosystems come in, because it just allows you to find that answer so much quicker.
That's great. Thanks very much. Do you belong to any particular organisations?
Yeah, look, in the early days, probably I found the most effective form of forming relationships outside of cold calling local companies was when the meetup scene started to arrive. And it's very healthy today, particularly in Melbourne. But back in the early days when there wasn't really meetups, it was sort of maybe informal, the word wasn't trending or wasn't known, but just going out and meeting local people. And then if they can't help you or they can't offer a perspective, maybe they know someone that can. So I think, meetups and groups were very powerful. And then there was definite cases where some government departments would often have competitions that you could enter, and you would network through those. And then today, I'm a member of a few. One, there's the CEO Institute, where they put like-minded, like-sized, non-competing businesses together to solve problems. And all through our evolution as a business, we've always had those networks of contacts to go and ask.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, we're talking about ecosystems, but ecosystems are not just geographic. And as Rachael has flagged, they can also be a very valuable business strategy. And when they're used as a business strategy, the ecosystem is that interconnected set of services that enables the user to fulfill a variety of needs in one integrated experience. So the The standout companies that use ecosystem strategies are companies like Alibaba and Tencent and eBay. Now, I read a McKinsey report just recently that claimed that by 2025, 30% of the world's gross domestic product would be generated by businesses using ecosystem strategies. Rachel, you're responsible for Xero's global sales, marketing, communication, and customer functions. How does a company with the size and reach of Xero leverage its ecosystem strategy? And in particular, how does your role allow this to happen?
That's a great question, Rosemary, and there's a lot in there. So let me try and break it down. So I'll start with the role, because I think that's really important. And as I've seen this company grow from 1,000 employees to 3,000 employees, under 1 million subscribers to nearly 2.5 million subscribers. And as a company grows, as Chris's company has, and Mond's company is continuing to do with the fantastic showcase that we just saw then, it's very easy to get back into a siloed approach, because the organisation grows, the teams grow, everybody knows what their role and their remit is. And I started to see that that's the way that we were becoming as an organisation, where we were effectively shipping our org chart to our customers and hoping that they would fit into the way that we worked. Now, that becomes even more complicated when you are trying to deliver a product and a service and a platform. Essentially, we've got a small business platform that's much bigger than the compliance component of it, which we sell our product, because we have all these ecosystem partners that plug in. So it's a small business one-stop shop platform for millions of small businesses around the world. You have to be very cognizant of the fact that that becomes very complex for your customers to try and digest. So we made a very deliberate and fundamental move to put all of the customer functions under one executive, so that we could actually map the customer journey. And we have, customers that are accountants and bookkeepers, that they come on board and partner with us, but we still consider them our customers. And then we have the direct end user customers as well, the small businesses. So having the customer journey experience and that responsibility under one executive just means that we're constantly looking at the journey that both the channel partners and the direct customers go through, and we are removing friction for them along the way. And we are making sure that our ecosystem partners, and we have various ecosystem partners that are broader than the apps that I talked about. We also have financial service banks and financial institutions that plug into our platform. We have small businesses connecting to each other. So it's about how we can create an experience that is smarter, seamless, and simple for small businesses to run their business, so that they can let the back office, we can take care of all of that, and some of the ecosystem players can help them with more of the management of their small business, so that they can focus on what they do best, which is serve their customers in the decision of, the choice they've made to be a small business owner. So having that deliberate strategy of, twofold, of having all of the customer experience under one executive, just means that we're able to obsess about the customer experience on a daily basis and remove that friction and make it a very simple and ubiquitous experience for our customers. And on the other side, it's about ensuring that we are thinking about that through the lens of not just us, thinking about that through the lens of who are all the other ecosystem partners that we need to consider that play as part of that customer experience. And, I can touch on this a little bit more in the course of this discussion, but COVID was a really pivotal moment for us in terms of being able to react to that really quickly and be able to support our customers. And we could do that because we had the orchestration all kind of already working well together.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Rachel. Look forward to hearing more about that. Mond Qu, you are a young founder of a young tech startup. And some people suggest that the most dangerous threat to a startup is being in the wrong ecosystem, and that as a founder, what you should do is you should evaluate your ecosystem. You should decide if there are suboptimal mindsets or questionable support or a bland community or mediocre talent. And if you believe that that's the case, that you should get out of that ecosystem and go somewhere else. As a young tech startup founder, How important is the Silicon Yarra ecosystem to United Make?
Thanks for the question, Rosemary. Always tough and never easy, but I'll try and break it as best I can. So I guess if I had to break down ecosystems, there's the ones that you can provide and the ones that you're a part of. I think just by understanding the larger impact of other ecosystems functioning around you gives a better insight to the value of your own company. Like just like how Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Facebook are large ecosystems that we're all part of. As a young startup, it's really important to understand how to navigate these ecosystems. Which ones do you want to really invest in? Rachael, I have to admit that we do use Xero in our company. So, I want to advocate for that one as well.
Fabulous.
But also what we do is not only do we think of the ecosystem as part of what we do, but we also support them so they can be better with us. So we actually buy shares of companies and things that actually we use. So like things like Adobe, things like Xero, we actually own stocks for them just because, if they're going down, we're going to be going down with them. Now, also, the other aspect of this is I think we need to think about this ecosystem physically and digitally. And I think what we sort of coined is the sort of phygital environment that's going to emerge in the future. And I think understanding these site conditions is really key because I think physically, Yarra has a lot of small digital creative studios. And over time, it used to be a manufacturing hub, but now it's all becoming a lot more creative, a lot more digital, a lot more online. And, when you start Googling something, you could find a lot of things in the 5 kilometer radiuses. I want to echo what sort of Chris said as well, that I find like the Yarra environment or Melbourne in general, that we're all quite open and willing to help. You just have to go and search for it. We're all very, I think, helpful and humble people from my experiences. But I feel like it's just hard to find sometimes. If we go towards the digital environment, I think this is where the last 10 to 20 years has really exploded. So it's less about physically where you are, but it's more about the network that you have. So I feel closer to some of my employees in London than my next door neighbor, just because that, we share a lot more traits, a lot more ideas, and you can connect with more like-minded people all around the world. And the only thing that I would say is that the hindrance was our internet speed back in 2014 when, we couldn't upload things and things like that were really slow. And I kept on going on about why can't we upload quicker than we were? So hopefully things are getting better. At the moment, we have the fastest internet that we can, have physically. So I would say that, Yarra has definitely affected United Make on how we've operated as a startup today. But it really, depends on the industry because, it's purely like software that we're sort of looking at as well as things. But distance is no longer a hindrance. I think it's just internet speed and time zones. So I think not only should you look at the ecosystems that you're part of, but also what ecosystems are you creating and that transition of, being the large predator in the ecosystem or being like the small plankton in that ecosystem. So I think to see where you fit. And also if you want to be part of that ecosystem or where do you want to lead? So I think we can open this into further questions, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Mond. I have noticed that a number of questions are coming through there, but I'll ask one question to the panel. So this is to everyone. Please just jump in, our panelists, and answer this in the way that you want to answer it. So Australia is said to have a strong ecosystem, and I was reading a 2019 tech ecosystem report that ranked Australia globally as 7th. We had, according to this report, about 12,700 tech startups, of which about 260 were public. But we only have a few unicorns, relatively few unicorns, and really only 15 have been founded since 2011. In that tech report, there was about, in Melbourne, there was about 12 to 15 Sunicorns, those companies that had received a substantial amount of venture capital in their early rounds, and then a number of what they call minicorns, which are high-tech startups that had received funding. But again, it was only about 15. Whereas in Melbourne, there was 97 tech startups altogether. So really not a lot of them have been identified as being on the way. So what do you think is necessary to help inspiring tech startups to scale and to scale globally. What are your thoughts there?
I'll jump in with a view. The first thing is, I think you mentioned a lot about unicorns, and I think it's really important that we really take a step back and look at what our measure of success is. One of the things, I invested a number of tech startups around Melbourne, and one thing that I noticed in the early days when looking at that, you would come across individuals where they had an exit plan even before they'd validated their business model, which seemed very foreign to me. We never had an exit plan. It was to build. Matt and I formed the business with a vision of going to work for something that motivated us more than our jobs that we had at the time, but to build an environment that we wanted to work in. And it was to run it in perpetuity. And we call our culture creating a 100-year startup. And we've got 20 years of incremental growth, 20 years. We've been profitable for 20 years, double-digit growth for 20 years. But it's been a slow and steady journey. And we're 100% private owned. We have no debt. Well, we've got lots of debt, technical debt, organisational debt, management debt, but no financial debt. And to us, we're now in control of our own destiny. And that's powerful. The concept of publicly listing or hitting $1 billion valuation when you haven't even made $1, those sort of things never excited us. Yes, if you get in the Silicon Valley world, it's how they measure success. But Melbourne, Australia, we can be different, and we should be celebrating other forms of business success. And there's so many companies out there that are just doing amazing things that have got no aspiration to be the next Google or Facebook. Because that is not the perfect measure of success. There are multiple measures of success. So, and as an ecosystem and as environment in Australia, we definitely don't have the funds and the money that the US. Not a week would go by without a venture capital firm or private equity firm tapping us on the shoulder in some way. You want a public list. You want to do this. It comes with success, but a lot of it is also network driven, and we don't have that network in Australia anywhere near as strong. So it actually breeds, I think, more hardened entrepreneurs, the ones that do make it very successful, on their own bat. So yeah, so I'm just pushing a little bit back on that definition.
No, that's fine. And you jumped ahead of me too, because I had a question for you about that. So what do you think what kind of measures of success might there be for an ecosystem?
Maybe one of the other panelists can jump in and I'll have a think about that.
Well, I was just going to pick up on where you left off, Chris, because I think you touched on something really important, and I think it's a mindset component. Like, there are some really innovative private equity companies like Square Pegged and those organisations that have been born in the Southern Hemisphere and are really encouraging Australian tech companies to think big. But I think they're few and far between. If you look at the last decade, the Atlassians and the Xeros of the world that have grown with these extraordinary growth rates globally, it is quite an anomaly. And I think that there is absolutely, in that ecosystem, there's a sentiment shift that needs to happen with respect to short-term investments. Because, like Chris alluded to, there's no overnight success, and there is definitely, in my experience, a mindset that's very different to the Silicon Valley investors, which is, you're almost rewarded for operating in the red in the Silicon Valley, and you're penalised by the shareholder and definitely the stock market by operating in the red in the Southern Hemisphere. It's very much about bottom line rather than top line. And I think that we're going to start to see that shift. And I think COVID's going to accelerate that, because there's going to be a lot more innovation that's born out of necessity off the back of COVID, and the change and the shift in consumer behaviours and the way things are done is going to create a lot of opportunity. And I think we're going to see globalisation from a investment perspective happen over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, which is going to be a really great opportunity for the entrepreneurs in the Southern Hemisphere to tap into some of those networks that come in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes, that's actually, why don't we jump to the pandemic question? Because that is kind of like the elephant on the table around here. So the pandemic has raised potential very big changes to the way we work and the way we conduct our businesses. So I'm interested to know, what impact did the pandemic have on your businesses and how did you respond to it?
I can jump in here.
Thanks.
As you know, I run a design agency, and we're quite adaptable. So in the first week, we had our clients, about 80% of our clients, calling up to put everything on hold. So that was a big blow for us. But we were able to focus our energy on the furniture side of things that we sort of did. And that had a big growth area for us. We basically started customizing a lot of furniture for working from home. And it's forced us to innovate a lot more digitally. It's something that we've always been pushing for, but I think this has definitely catalyzed what we've been able to do over the last 6 months. And for us, it's definitely made us a lot more resilient, and also really tested our ability to deliver design projects over this period of time. And I think moving forwards, we'll be taking a lot of those learnings into our future projects.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll jump in with a sort of an ecosystem view, because that's the topic. So when we're very dependent on an ecosystem for selling our software. And we do 250 people in PaperCut spread across a number of continents, physical presence, but we sell in 160, and it's through a network of resellers. And the first layer of that we call our All4A Solution Center layer, and they're dedicated businesses. Their whole business model is selling our software, and they do it for Europe and US and other things. And when the pandemic hit, we had to make a strategic decision. We know that schools were shutting, universities were shutting, offices were, closing down. It was going to affect our revenue, and likely to affect the revenue of our ecosystem more than our own. When you are a transactional-based reseller or service provider, you're going to be hit hard. So we made a decision that philosophically, how do we want to handle it? And we made the decision that rather than tighten spending and things like that, we're going to do the opposite, which was inject more rebate and more margins back into our channel, because we didn't want them to collapse, because we know that on the backside of this, there's going to be a huge opportunity. We've seen a number of competitors fall by the wayside through this. Our ecosystem has remained strong, and they were shocked by us making a decision to actually shift our investment in the other direction. And it actually made news, and we've had some of our competitors' ecosystem approach us to want to join our ecosystem, simply because of that long-term view that we had. We're not running ecosystem of resellers by quarterly return and QBRs and hitting quotas on the like. We're looking at that 5, 10, 15, 20, 50-year investment mindset. So I think with any of these challenges, and there's no doubt this has been an economic challenge, a personal challenge, a business structural challenge, working from home, there is also opportunities. And through any point of inflection, whether it be a technology point of inflection or a society point of inflection, breeds opportunity. And I think if you really stay true to that entrepreneurial mindset, you have to look at, like people who accuse me of, I'm the delusional optimist, but that's part of one of those magic traits. I think you have a lot of that magic trait. Entrepreneurs also have that magic trait. So those points of inflection breed opportunities. There will be challenge, but there's opportunities.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Rachel, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I was actually going to share something. So we conducted a study with Forrester to ascertain what were some of the trends that we were seeing in the small business economy off the back of the pandemic, which is quite relevant to us talking about what we're talking about here, and also quite enlightening and insightful for the listeners in terms of potentially looking at what opportunities are going to be born out of 2020 off the back of of COVID. So there was 5 key themes. The first was going digital. So I think that the acceleration of digital adoption in how businesses are operating has, like, 1 decade of evolution has happened in a 9-month period. And I think that that's enormous. And I'm talking about front office and back office. So all these organisations that had to try and work out either how they were going to pivot to serve their customers or what they were going to do to manage their workforces. So there's definitely opportunities just in thinking about that. The second component, which is what Chris was alluding to from his relationships with his ecosystem partners, is this sentiment around empathy and personalisation. So it's around, 1 + 1 = 4. So how do we do this together? And this is partner to partner, but also business to consumer or business to customer. So, there's this human connection that's been formed out of this crisis that I think is what people are not only looking for, but expecting now. Like, we really need to think about how we can support each other. And that's about small businesses thinking about how they can support their customers, create the right safe environment for them to continue to shop with them, but also how we as partners can support each other, because, if one goes down, it's going to really harm the other in the long term. The third is the ecosystem support. And for small businesses, this is, the actual term was ecosystem support was the third theme that came out of this. And what they were alluding to in this Forrester study, which you can download from the Xero.com website if you want a deeper read, is that those small businesses that leveraged the ecosystem around them were the ones that were either, that were thriving, and, if they'd gone into hibernation, they were surviving and working out ways that they could continue to keep their heads above water. So that was leveraging the ecosystem from government support to their advisors, be it their IT advisors, their accounting advisors, and then leveraging their partnerships as well. The fourth was digital marketing reach. So this goes to, alludes to the first point around back office, front office, and digital. But what this means is that a lot of these businesses that were only thinking very narrow, all of a sudden could actually touch an audience that was global. So you can think about the amount of businesses that have just gone from shopfront to online and all of a sudden are serving customers globally. And that's a massive opportunity. And then for them to be able to market that and use the social and the ambassadorship that comes from word of mouth, which we know is the strongest platform to be able to accelerate a business's growth. That's been huge. And we've seen so many success stories of companies that have just gone, wow, I did not expect that this is, what 2020 would bring for me when I was sitting back in March and I saw the pandemic hit. And then the final one is that, and it alludes to the fourth point, is consumer behaviour has changed. So whereby we were traditionally, we've always had the opportunity to, for example, leverage goods and services online. We've now been forced into a change in the way that our mindset is and the way that we actually do consume products and services that is probably unlikely to shift back. So that trend is definitely here to stay.
That sounds like a must-read report, Rachel. Thanks for telling us about it. I think I've written it down. I'm definitely going to download that. We've got some really interesting questions coming up here. So I'm just going to jump to the questions. And the very first one is from Frank. And I think it's to you, Mond. And it says, can this Spring Festival relevant design possibly be deployed in mainland China in the future?
Yes. So when we started our design studio, one of the things that I think as a business decision, it's so difficult is that we design something once for one specific use, right? That's like the worst business decision because you can't roll it out again, you can't scale it. What we've done with a lot of our projects is actually license them out. So for like Chinese New Year, for these digital festivals, we're actually creating templates and systems that people can also use and creating our own ecosystem within that. So absolutely, reach out to me. We can roll this out anywhere in the world. We've coded up from scratch. So this is something that we could definitely help you out with if you need.
That's great. Thank you, Mond. And we've got one here, or actually got two interesting ones from David Painter. In fact, a few here. I'm sorry to jump around. Somebody has asked, Rachel, after interviewing 37 young companies this year, I am surprised that the only common factor was Xero. What are your thoughts that make Xero the first choice for young companies? And this is David Painter.
It's David, is it?
Yeah.
David, thank you for the question. I probably have a biased view, but I think that we're quite unique in the way that we show up in the marketplace. I think as a purpose-led company that really is about improving the lives of people in small businesses, their communities, and their advisors around the globe, we have a philosophy that's called the inside out culture. So I actually started my journey at Xero as the chief people officer. I have a marketing and tech background, but Rod wanted the head of people to be a marketer, to really help codify the strategy and then embed it and mobilize it through a very fast growing workforce. So what that meant is that we could make sure we were bringing the right people in that really understood our strategy, and that we could win the hearts and minds of the people in the business before we started to do that through our ecosystem, our partners, and then out to our customers. And that created this movement, to be honest, and that is, I think, the magic that we have. Everyone, and I don't know whether you've spoken, David, to anyone that works at Xero, but you'll get the same passion and the same reaction. The people, it's a vocation for all of our employees. They feel like they're in an environment where they have a belief in our purpose. They have a sense of belonging, to be their best self, leverage their strengths and create mastery around the job that they're doing. Really clear alignment on the strategy right through the organisation and out through the regions. And then, because of all of that, we create this environment that's, based a lot on the premise of just positive psychology and well-being, which is how do you create this environment where people can flourish. Once you get that right on the inside, and then you have this ecosystem of partners, then that really amplifies out through to the partner environment and the broader ecosystem, which touches the millions and millions of small businesses. So I think that is the premise, and that is the sort of magic, which is a secret sauce that can't be replicated. And then on top of that, you look at our product, which is beautiful. So 2 of our values are beautiful and human, and we're constantly balancing how do we use the technology, machine learning, the AI to create an intuitive experience for our customers so that they can get on with running their business. It's gamified, like it's a sense of satisfaction for them as well. It's brought, what was traditional, old school accounting compliance into an environment where it's fun and energetic, and the whole brand resonates around that. So I think there is definitely that culture which is just so difficult to replicate, and it's amplified out because we have this philosophy of doing it together. And then on top of that, we just have a beautiful product. And it means that, we're freeing up our humans to actually have those deeper connections with those small businesses, and we can celebrate their success.
Thanks, Rachel. We've got a question here. We've got a couple of alumni in our panellists. So somebody has asked, is there an opportunity for Swinburne alum to come together at Swinburne as a meetup hub to breed and encourage Silicon Yarra ecosystem, or Silicon Yarra to build the ecosystem? Don't all rush me. Chris?
I'll jump in with that with a bit of a perspective. One of the things that I do at Swinburne is I volunteered for one of the industry advisory groups. So each one of the faculties has actually a requirement in Swinburne, because Swinburne positions itself as an industry connected organisation. So they have an industry advisory group in each faculty. Volunteering that time, I'm able to offer advice through to faculty, but there's also a great networking opportunity. There's some ex-Swinburne tech companies in there. There's some local tech companies. There's someone from Google. It's a great networking opportunity. So I think getting involved in that, and then of course, if this was a physical event, some of the chat afterwards is really important. So I think anything that brings a connection of people together, whether it is through university or not, produces connection, and that's super important for supporting business advancement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Samantha Huddle's got an interesting question, and it interests me because the 3 of you actually, I think, speak to this indirectly. So let's have a direct response. Do you see social impact as part of your purpose?
I can take that. I'll take it first. So 100%, absolutely. We have been on quite a journey with SEI, so social environmental impact. We now have a team of people that focuses on that, and we have funds that we set aside every year. So that team sits under my responsibility under the comms function, SEI. And the first goal that I gave them about 18 months ago was I want to be carbon neutral. Like, we want the XLT, the exec want the company to be carbon neutral by the end of 2020. And we achieved that by the end of 19, actually. So they did it within a 6-month period. And that's only one element of it. Then there's the element around what we're doing with community give back. We've put together a fundraising page for all of our regions in terms of where our customers and our partners can actually contribute to fundraising. It's the Xero fundraising page. And then we've got the work that we're doing on product. So how we can help small businesses become conversant in their carbon footprint. So literally using our technology. I mean, it's not launched yet, but we're looking at how we can, through the GL, have a look at where the carbon might sit and then calculate a carbon score and then see if they can offset that as a small business as well. And then there's the community give back in terms of we give all of our staff days off per year to actually work in not-for-profit. So they're just a couple of examples of elements of social good and impact, and it's table stakes these days. It's an expectation that that organisations, definitely ones that are listed companies, are actually got a clear strategy and are investing in that space.
Thank you. Does anyone want to pick up? Chris?
Yeah. I'll look. I think it's very important, and as I said, everything from our name resonates our purpose, PaperCut, but we've got a lot more sophisticated that over the years. And what I'd like to say to everyone in the business is that we're a stakeholder-driven business. We're not a shareholder-driven business, and we're very, very clear on who our stakeholders are. It's our customers, our partners, and all the people that work in PaperCut. But that's very, very hard. Whether we go and do a business course, we're taught to optimize one variable. But when you're optimizing multiple variables, it's very hard. It's a lot more challenging. You get into philosophical discussions. It's sort of like, the business world's easy, optimize for shareholder value, bounded by a boundary condition of ethics and law. And to many business people, it's debatable which one comes first, ethics or law. I find that ludicrous. It's you've got to optimize for something that motivates humans, right? And we are far more sophisticated creatures than just maximizing for our financial return. When we maximize for the community we're in, when we maximize for the work environment, for our partners, for our customers, the work suddenly starts becoming more than a job. It starts becoming something you want to do, and it becomes enjoyable. And I often say, look, there are days where I feel like I am working, but the vast majority of it, I just couldn't think of anything better than be doing and innovating and doing what I'm doing. And I think, you find many people through lots of businesses that have that passion about what they do, and it's so much more fun. Not only do I think it's becoming more important in just general business and expectation with the next generation of employees and workers and entrepreneurs coming into the world, I actually think it is, something that will be setting businesses apart, because it creates what I call a passion landscape.
Passion landscape. I like that term. I'll give you one more question because we're running out of time here. Richard has asked, about the importance of the ecosystem to find, recruit, or maybe even poach talent. What are your thoughts?
I could offer what not to do on this one through the School of Hard Knocks. So we've definitely brought in a lot of talent over the years from our ecosystem. It might be the likes of companies like HP or Xerox or Canon, where they're bringing some of that executive, but culturally aligned, of course, talent into the organisation. The one thing I've learned is that when you're in an ecosystem, it is more difficult because there's emotion, there's business connection there. And If you're seen as poaching someone, that's a negative thing. You can turn a positive partnership into a negative partnership overnight with decisions like that. So the biggest thing I've learned over the years is that when you are recruiting in an ecosystem environment, the key is talking and being transparent, right? So talking about actually asking your partners the type of talent that they think would help your business grow. And then you can have conversations about that. We have worked with our partners where they've had people in their organisation looking for a career change, right? And they've actually directed them to come and work for us because it's better that they stay in the ecosystem, right? They're not seeing it as a loss of an employee from their business. They're seeing a growth of an individual into an ecosystem. So when you start having a lot more of these transparent conversations and what I call grown-up conversations, something I didn't understand in the early days, you start seeing that you get employee mobility, you get recruitment, you get referral well beyond the walls of your own business. And that's really powerful if you get it right. When you get it wrong, you get screamed at over the phone. There's a number of cases where that's happened. But when you get it right, it's extremely powerful.
I think it's my philosophy on anything to do with human relationships is that you want people to be there because they want to be there. So I think that there should be more sharing of talent and resources across the ecosystem. I remember having this conversation when I was the Chief People Officer at Xero with the head of the Chief People Officer at realestate.com and saying, should we bring the Xeros and the real estates and the Seeks together and see if we can run some sort of program where there's work experience in the different organisations so that they can learn from each other. And, the downside risk is that they're happy on their work experience journey and they want to stay where they are. Well, that should be okay, because I think otherwise you'll end up with presenteeism where people are actually physically in the company that they're working for, but, their head is somewhere else. And my philosophy on anything to do with relationships is you want people to be there because they want to be there, and it's your job to create, the environment where they can be their authentic self and do the best work of their lives. And that's why we've done things at Xero, like we've changed sick leave to wellbeing leave. So whether you're physically sick or you just, don't feel mentally up to going to work that day because you want a day to yourself, a mental health day, then that should be okay, because I'd rather people be there because they want to be there.
That was a very interesting idea of swapping employees around for work experience within the companies. That's an interesting take on the ecosystem. Thank you very much, Rachael. Look, it's been a fascinating discussion, and I think we could go on. And I feel I've barely touched the questions that have come through to us, but unfortunately we have run out of time. And so and I feel the panellists have left us with a lot of ideas and thoughts, and I'd like to thank them for sharing their experience and their insights with us. Thank you, Chris Dance of PaperCut, Rachael Powell of Xero, and Mond Qu of MakeMark. And to everybody else here today, I'd like to say good night and wish you all good health and an enjoyable end of the year, and look forward to seeing you again in 2021 when the Learning from Entrepreneurs seminar series recommences. Thank you very much for joining us.